Chadwick Willesee. On September 5, 1990, in Palm Bay, Florida, 22-year-old Chadwick Willesee burglarized his neighbor Marley Sather's home. When the 56-year-old returned unexpectedly, Willesee attacked, striking her in the head, binding her with wire, and strangling her. To cover up the crime, he set the house on fire. The brutal crime shocked the community. Willesee was caught soon after and sentenced to death on April 24, 1997. Still on death row in 2025, no execution date has been set for the arson and murder. James Ford. On April 6, 1997, in Charlotte County, Florida, 37-year-old James Dennis Ford invited Gregory and Kimberly Malnery, a married couple in their 20s, on a fishing trip. Ford shot Gregory in the head, slit his throat, and bludgeoned him. Kimberly tried to escape with their daughter, but Ford caught her, raped her, and killed her. He left their toddler daughter alive but alone in the area. Ford was arrested days later, convicted, and sentenced to death in 1999. He remained on death row until he was executed by lethal injection in February 2025. William Ziegler. On December 24, 1975, in Winter Garden, Florida, 30-year-old William Thomas "Tommy" Ziegler was convicted of the quadruple murder of his wife, Eunice Ziegler, her parents, Perry and Virginia Edwards, and a customer named Charlie Mays at his furniture store. The victims were shot and beaten, and Ziegler himself was wounded in the abdomen. Prosecutors theorized that Ziegler shot himself to make it appear as though the murders were committed by two other men during a robbery. Ziegler was sentenced to death on July 2, 1976. Gary Ray Bowles. On November 17, 1994, in Jacksonville, Florida, 32-year-old Gary Ray Bowles targeted 47-year-old Walter Hinton in his home. He beat Hinton with a lamp, crushing his skull, then strangled him with a cord, leaving blood and broken bones behind. This was one of 6 men Bowles killed in a similar manner. After a manhunt, Bowles was apprehended and sentenced to death on August 13, 1999. Oscar Ray Bolin, Jr. On December 5, 1986, in Tampa, Florida, 24-year-old Oscar Ray Bolin, Jr. abducted 26-year-old Terry Lynn Matthews near a post office. He beat her head with a heavy object, crushing her skull, then strangled her with a cord until she was dead, leaving her body in a ditch. This was one of 3 women he killed in a similar manner. Bolin was arrested after a manhunt and sentenced to death on January 9, 1992. Mark Anthony Poole. On October 12, 2001, in Lakeland, Florida, 40-year-old Mark Anthony Poole broke into the home of 24-year-old Noah Scott and his 18-year-old fiancée, Loretta White, who was 5 months pregnant. Poole attacked Scott with a tire iron, delivering at least 13 blows to his head, resulting in blunt force trauma. He then raped White, striking her multiple times with the tire iron, causing severe injuries, including the loss of part of her fingers. Despite her injuries, White managed to call 911, leading to Poole's arrest. He was convicted and sentenced to death on February 11, 2005. Jonathan Alsager. On January 6, 2016, in Lakeland, Florida, 30-year-old Jonathan Alsager, along with 2 accomplices, forcibly entered the home of 24-year-old David Washington. They fatally shot Washington, 31-year-old Stacy Branch, and 23-year-old Angelica Castro. A 4th individual, Felix Campos, was also shot but survived and identified Alsager as one of the assailants. Alsager was arrested and convicted on September 27, 2018, for 3 counts of first-degree murder, among other charges. He was sentenced to death on March 12, 2019. As of 2025, he still remains on death row in Florida. Michael Bargo. On April 17, 2011, in Summerfield, Florida, 18-year-old Michael Bargo lured 15-year-old Seath Jackson to a home, where he was ambushed by a group, beaten, shot multiple times, and his body burned in a fire pit. The remains were then placed in paint buckets and dumped in a quarry. Bargo was arrested days later and convicted of first-degree murder. Sentenced to death on August 20, 2013, his sentence was reaffirmed in 2019 after a resentencing. Joe Long. On May 13, 1984, in Tampa, Florida, 30-year-old Robert Joe Long abducted 20-year-old Michelle Sims from the street. He beat her severely, strangled her with a rope, tight and slow, then slit her throat deeply before leaving her body in a field. Michelle was one of 9 victims he murdered in a similar manner. Long was eventually caught after a survivor came forward, and on September 23, 1985, he was sentenced to death. Tiffany Ann Cole. On July 8, 2005, in Jacksonville, Florida, 23-year-old Tiffany Ann Cole targeted James and Carol Sumner, a retired couple in their 60s she knew from way back. With 3 pals, she kidnapped them, taped them up tight, and hauled them to Charlton County, Georgia. They dumped the Sumners, still alive, into a pre-dug grave and buried them, dirt choking them out slow and awful, just for money and a car. Cops nabbed her days later. On March 6, 2007, she got death row in Florida. Still there in 2025. No execution date yet. Amelia Lily Carr. Back on February 17, 2009, in Boardman, Florida, 24-year-old Amelia Lily Carr had it out for Heather Strong, her boyfriend Joshua Fulgham's ex-wife. Jealousy boiling over, she tricked Heather, 26, into a trailer. There, they taped her to a chair, beat her senseless, and slapped a plastic bag over her head. Amelia grabbed a cord and strangled her, slow, brutal, until Heather was gone, then crammed her body in a trunk. Cops nabbed her fast. By December 13, 2011, she landed on Florida's death row, still waiting there in 2025. No execution date yet. Michael James Jackson. On November 18, 1986, in Jacksonville, Florida, Michael James Jackson, a guy with a mean streak, went after Andrea Boyer and Jerry Boyette, both in their 30s. With a buddy, he broke into their place to rob them, tied them up, and beat them bloody with a gun butt, faces smashed in. Then he strangled them both, slow and ruthless, leaving them dead in a ditch near Stark. All for some quick cash. Cops grabbed him fast. On March 27, 1987, he landed on Florida's death row, still waiting there in 2025. No execution date set. Donald Dilbeck. On June 24, 1990, in Tallahassee, Florida, Donald Dilbeck, a 27-year-old with a rap sheet, spotted Faye Van, 44, in a mall parking lot. He jumped her, stole her car, and when she fought back, he went berserk, stabbed her 31 times with a hunting knife, chest and stomach torn open, then slashed her throat for good measure. Blood everywhere, just to take her ride. Cops nabbed him that day. By February 14, 1991, he was slapped with the death penalty. He's been on Florida's death row since, still there in 2025, no execution date set yet. Mark Sievers. On June 28, 2015, in Bonita Springs, Florida, Mark Sievers, a 47-year-old husband, decided his wife, Teresa Sievers, 46, had to go. He hired 2 hitmen who broke into their home while she was alone. They ambushed her, smashing her skull with hammers, 17 brutal blows, blood and bone everywhere, leaving her dead on the kitchen floor. All for insurance, cash, and control. Lucius Boyd. On December 5, 1998, in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Lucius Boyd, a 40-year-old drifter, crossed paths with Donia DaCosta, 21, at a church event. He lured her to a spot, raped her, then stabbed her over a dozen times with a knife, chest and back shredded, before mutilating her body and dumping it in an alley. A savage attack for no clear reason. David Spahr. On July 8, 2010, in Jacksonville, Florida, David Spahr, a 19-year-old drifter, met Tiara Poole, 21, online and went to her place. Once inside, he turned on her, stabbed her 89 times with a kitchen knife, chest and neck torn apart, nearly cutting her head off. Blood soaked the apartment, all because he wanted to kill. Cops caught him fast after he bragged about it. Eddie Lee Sexton. On August 7, 1997, in Tampa, Florida, Eddie Lee Sexton, a 50-year-old dad, forced his daughter, Pixie, to kill her husband, Joel Good, 24. He made her strangle him with a rope, slow and choking, while he watched, part of his sick control over his kids. Joel's body got dumped in a swamp. It tied back to Eddie abusing and killing family members for years. Leon Davis, Jr. On December 13, 2007, in Lake Wales, Florida, Leon Davis, Jr., a 30-year-old robber, hit a store and found Yvonne Bustamante and Juanita Luciano, both 27, inside. He tied them up, doused them with gasoline, and lit them on fire, burning them alive, screaming as flames ate their skin. All for some cash. Billy Mansfield, Jr. On December 8, 1975, in Spring Hill, Florida, 25-year-old Billy Mansfield, Jr. lured 15-year-old Elaine Ziegler from a nearby campground to his family's property. He murdered her and buried her body in the backyard, where it would remain hidden for years. Mansfield was responsible for the deaths of at least 5 women, committing these brutal acts in both Florida and California. His chilling pattern of violence was revealed when police discovered multiple bodies buried on the property in 1981. Daniel Burns. On August 18, 1987, in Manatee County, Florida, 42-year-old Daniel Burns, Jr. fatally shot Florida Highway Patrol Trooper Jeff Young during a traffic stop on Interstate 75. Burns and his passenger, Samuel Williams, were returning to Detroit from Fort Myers, Florida. After being pulled over, Trooper Young discovered a bank bag containing what appeared to be cocaine in the trunk of their vehicle. A struggle ensued, during which Burns shot and killed Trooper Young. Burns was arrested later that night and subsequently convicted of first-degree murder and trafficking in cocaine.
Thank you for watching. Until next time, stay curious.